Come on through, Natural Light. Yes. Hey, it's me, Ronnie, back again. It's been a few months since I was last here talking about the fact that my husband of nearly 19 years suddenly passed away August 2nd of this year. And a lot has been going on. It's been a roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster since that day. I I feel like I've been moving nonstop. And I think if you've ever been through a death of someone very close to you, a family member, that you were responsible for it, not responsible for the death, but responsible for the business of death, the next of kin, or what the executor, the administrator, the estate, or whatever, what have you. I think you know that the business of death is so time consuming, at times so overwhelming, that it you almost feel like it's too much to do. Like if you when you lose someone so close to you, you really shouldn't have to deal with all of the business of that. But anywho, it's been a few months now. We're moving into coming up on the third month since his passing. In November we will reach the third month since his passing. And while so much has changed, a lot hasn't changed. In the first 2 days following his death, the business of it all started that next day, as he passed away on a Sunday morning. So I was immediately on that Sunday, I had to move into taking care of everything myself without having him here, and without even consulting him on anything. And that was my first day, really, of him not being here. And it really didn't feel like death. It just felt like my husband wasn't home. But the house was eerily quiet, eerily empty, even though the majority of the family was here. That following day, the business of death began, and I had to call Social Security to report his death and get that ball rolling, get that business started. I knew at that point that my journey of being a homeschool mom was pretty much ending, because we were always I was always home to homeschool the kids, and he was the one who was working. And even though he was not working the year following the preceding his death, we were still homeschooling because we still had some income, and we were still making it by the grace of God. But I knew immediately that I wasn't going to be able to continue to homeschool. Even I would have had to have purchased all my curriculum and then still teach, but I knew that I was going to have to now go to work full time. I knew that was the next step in my journey, and therefore I would not be able to teach. And my youngest daughter, who is 14 and has entered into the ninth grade, while I wanted so much to be able to homeschool her throughout her high school career, and she as well wanted to continue to homeschool, I just knew it wasn't going to work out that way. And so I began the process of setting her up for school. My oldest had already graduated from high school, and he was all set for to begin his college career. And my oldest daughter was going into the 10th grade. She was already enrolled in our state's virtual academy. So in one of the virtual academies for my state. So she was all squared away. It was just my youngest that I had to get organized. And so the day after my husband's death, I had to start the process of getting her enrolled, because I knew school was starting in a few weeks at that point. So all of that got done the next day after his death. The second day after his death, I had to take my car into the shop. The car had been needing work for the longest time, but because he wasn't working, and because he wasn't working, we didn't worry about car repairs. So we just moved into, we just left it alone. And then the following year, the beginning of 2020, he, he wasn't feeling well. He wasn't as bad as he was, of course, leading up to his death, but he wasn't feeling well, and he still wasn't working. And then COVID hit the world. And so, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, apparently. He couldn't, at that point, there were no jobs to get because everybody was closing down. I was doing a little work from home, but that wasn't enough to sustain us. But anyway, the car had not been repaired, and the brakes were bad, and he didn't want me to drive the car because the brakes were bad. So at that point, at fast forward to 2 days after his death, I had to get my car worked on because I had to drive the car in order to get where I had to go and to do the things that I was going to need to do. And while I have my sister here in this state with us, I don't want to have to depend on her all the time, which I won't be able to depend on her all the time because she has her own life. And so, through the blessing of an uncle who he's always there, and he paid for me to get my car worked on because I had to get the brakes fixed. So 2 days after my husband's death, I, for the first time in my life, ordered an Uber. New beginnings, right? I ordered an Uber. My daughters rode in an Uber for their first time. I went to an auto shop and had to deal with the auto mechanic for the first time in my life because, no shame, as a woman, I don't have to deal with that if I don't want to. And I'm sure there are plenty of women out there who know what I mean when I say, if as a female, you do not have to take care of a car if you don't want to. There's always your father, there's always a boyfriend or any man that may be interested in you who would be willing to do that for you. I've always had that. Even when I was on my own and living away from home, even though I took my car in for oil changes and whatnot, if there was any real major work that needed to be done on my car, I always had a boyfriend or a male friend who would take the car in for me and get it worked on. So I never had to be bothered with that. But here we are 2 days after his death, and I had to be responsible for that. I had to go deal with an auto shop. I had to go make the arrangements to bring the car in, to leave my car, so that the brakes can get worked on. And even then, it was an auto shop that my husband would have never, hear me when I say, he would have never gone to. It was a local auto shop. My husband was always either going to the dealership or going to a more national brand to get the car worked on. My sister recommended whoever she went to, and that's where I went, and I got it done. And I got the car back the next day. And day 2 of Ubering. No, I did day 2 of Ubering, and to go pick up the car. My daughters stayed home for the first time by themselves with my 18-year-old. They weren't by themselves, but they had never been allowed to stay home without a parent being home. And that was different. That was brand new. And so it just 2 days after his death, God just showed me that life is going to go on and you will be okay. So with all of that done with the car, I also had to make arrangements for his remains. And I don't, at this point, I don't even remember how long it took to get in touch with the coroner and to know that the testing, that autopsy had been done, and I had to make arrangements for the funeral home. And I really didn't want to. At that point, I'm just like, you know what? His body doesn't matter. The body was sick. the body wasn't well. So I don't care what happens to the body, but you have to, because the state, the city, your town, your county, they are not going to be responsible for that. So you have to do something with it. And so my dad sent money for me to take care of it. And, thankfully, once you contact a funeral home, the funeral home pretty much takes over everything. They communicate with the coroner's office and arrange for the body and find whatever arrangements you are going to do, whether it's a funeral, whether it's cremation, whether it's memorial service, whatever it is you want to do. The funeral home will pretty much take care of everything. All you got to do is pay them and tell them what you want to do. And they took care of the death certificate and took care of his remains. And about 2 weeks later, his remains were handled, and about a week after that, his death certificate came in, and that's when we found out his cause of death. Without using any technical terms, I'll just say he had bladder cancer. He had bladder cancer. No, we didn't know because he never went to the doctor. So how would you know if you don't go to a doctor to get diagnosed? And all I can think about when we got the death certificates, which was more towards the end of August into early September, because I just kind of put it off. I really didn't want to get it. But I just think about the times that he was in so much pain. And to think that this man fought cancer unmedicated. And my spiritual belief tells me that August 2nd was his date. My spiritual belief tells me that our beginning and our end is preordained. So August 2nd was coming. And the event of August 2nd was going to happen. Whether it was cancer, whether it was a car accident, whether it was peacefully in his sleep. It was coming. That was his time. That was his date, preordained. That's what my spirituality has taught me. And so it just, there's so many mixed emotions around him suffering through cancer, unmedicated, when he didn't have to. He chose to. Because certainly once COVID came into the picture, he did not want to go to a doctor. He certainly didn't want to have to be admitted into a hospital because, as we all know, hospitals were shutting down visitation. Parents, mothers were birthing babies without the fathers present or any family present. There were people dying in hospitals without family around, and he didn't want that. So his thing was always, if it's his time to go, he would rather be home with the love of his family than to be in a hospital bed by himself. And when we talked about that stuff, it's not until after the fact that you realize that the signs were there, the indications were there. He knew without knowing, because I can only see what's happening on the outside. I can only see him suffering from the outside. I see that he's in pain. I can tell by the look on his face. I see him losing weight. I can tell that he's not well. But the actual feeling of what he was feeling on the inside, I don't know. And I just know that fighting cancer without any sort of medication, well, aside from acetaminophen, which is not adequate to fight cancer, obviously, it really just dulled the pain. It just made the pain slightly bearable, less aggravating. So it's like you have to mourn the person all over again, and then you have to put everything back together and try to realize, like, oh my goodness, all this time, all of this time, this is what was going on. But, that was that. So once I got my youngest daughter organized and set up for school, and school started at the end of August, I had to go on a major pursuit of finding full-time employment. I was working from home. I had already had an at-home job, part-time. That was helping. It was helping, but I knew I needed something full-time. And so I had faith, and I believed, and I told my mom about that, and I said, I'll have something come October. I said, by October, I'll have something. I'm not worried about it, and I went through a lot trying to figure out where I wanted to go with my career. Did I want to restart my previous career? Did I want to do something new? Do I care? What do I want to do? Do I want to just go get a job at Walmart? But, I have 3 kids I have to take care of. That includes an 18-year-old who is not independent. He's still dependent on me for housing, for food. So I have 3 kids I have to take care of. So I can't just go work at Walmart. I just looked for jobs. I just looked for anything. I know what my skill set is, and so I just looked for whatever I could find for my skill set. And what came about was customer service. Working in a call center, because the hours are flexible. And I have a schedule that allows me to be home in the beginning of the morning, in the early morning hours when my kids are getting up in the morning and they're getting their day started, and they're I'm home to help them get through their morning and to get their day started. And then I leave. And I come home, and it's after dinner when I come home, but it's still early enough that they are still wide awake. And it's still early enough that we can talk and chit chat. And it's been a journey going back to work full time. But I don't want this video to get too long. I just wanted to update really quickly what's been going on for the last 2.5 months. And, I'm handling it all. I haven't cried much recently. I'm doing what I gotta do. There are times, it's almost with the busyness of life, sometimes does not allow you to dwell in your sorrow. It really doesn't. Sometimes it just forces you to do what you need to do. I don't have time to cry because I gotta get up and go. I gotta get up and take care of the kids. I gotta get up and cook. I gotta take the dogs out, make sure the dogs taken care of, make sure the house is taken care of, and that's a whole other story. So I'll be back, and I will update you some more on what's going on.